I can see so far.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody hear me with this? Okay, good. All right. So I'm Adam Riegel. I am the city manager here for the city of Platteville. We obviously thank everybody for coming out to this presentation. This is going to be one of the many kind of update meetings that we start to have in regards to kind of the Platteville Fire Station project. So just to kind of give you a presentation outline of what we're going to be going over tonight, we want to make sure we get everybody out of here at 7 o'clock because that's when the library closes. So our plan is to kind of do the presentation. Make sure then that you guys have a lot of time to ask your questions. Otherwise, if we go past 7, it's not a problem. We just have to do a different procedure with, we have to all go down the elevator. So that's why we want to kind of make sure we get everybody out here before 7. But the game plan here tonight is to talk a little bit about the project history recap, why Owing Gray Learning Center site. We're going to talk a little bit about the concept design, cost estimates, the potential schedule timeline, go into why there's the need for a new fire station, the current facility challenges, what do our volunteer firefighters do, talk a little bit about community involvement going forward, and then obviously there'll be time to answer any questions that you may have. Our hope is that we've seen a lot of obviously questions that have come up either on Facebook. We've obviously heard it, I've heard it. We tried to put a lot of those answers into this presentation, but obviously if there's anything we missed, we want to make sure that we take that and try to answer those questions. So just to kind of go over the project history recap. In the summer of 2020, PA, the Public Administration Associates with Five Eagles Design, was hired to complete a fire department comprehensive analysis. This is the third study that has been done over the last 20 years. There was one done in 2008, I believe one in 2004, roughly around there, 3. So in the summer of 2020, they were essentially consulted to come in. In February of 2021, they actually presented the completed fire department comprehensive analysis. That can be found on our website. You can also find that presentation as well on our YouTube channels and our website as well. Then in March of 2022, the city of Platteville officially received confirmation of a $7 million appropriation approval to go towards the construction of a new fire station. In May of 2022, Five Eagles Design was selected to be the architectural firm to provide professional design services. In July of 2022, the staff worked with Five Eagles Design on beginning the stages of the concept plan. In August of 2022, the staff of Five Eagles Design toured 2 fire stations, Greenville and Swamico, because they were both very similar in our population sizes and were relatively new. In November of 2022, the Common Council adopted the concept plan and authorized the creation to go to schematic design. And obviously, we're in December of 2022, we're here right now. So, why Owing Gray Learning Center site? The answer was discovered within the fire department comprehensive analysis completed in 2021. The need for a facility at that time was determined to be around 31,900 square feet. And within that study, they focused on 3 main locations. They looked at the current fire station, and the first problem they ran into right there is currently right now, the 6 apparatus bay, if they were to design a new one, essentially fills the entire site. An 8th bay would completely take up the site with no room for anything else. There was no room for apparatus support, there was no drive-through capabilities, there was no on-site parking, and the structure would be several stories in order to accommodate, obviously, the 4 entrances for the fire station. They then shifted to the Platteville Armory. The site does have good access, obviously, on Water Street. There is potential training room on site that could be built. This ran into the same problem as the current station, or the current fire station. A 6 apparatus bay nearly filled the site. An 8 apparatus bay would completely take up the site. It would have required a 3-story concept facility. There would be challenges with parking. There would be challenges with pedestrian traffic. There was no room for future growth when they looked at the plans, and there was limited or no room for additional training spaces. The other issue we also ran into with the Platteville Armory is the city does not own that. That obviously is owned by the Department of Military Affairs. I know one of the questions that has come up that we saw in the public is, well, the city was able to get that for $1. That's not true. What happened with that is we were in negotiations with the DMA to try to get it for $1. It essentially went up the chain, and it came back saying, nope, it has to be at least $135,000 to have the site. Now, we're also aware of some other issues, obviously, with that site in regards to the age of the buildings, things that need to be done. So that was also some of the considerations that they looked at. The final site then they looked at, obviously, was Owing Gray Learning Center. It met all the program goals. It has additional space for a community room. It has space for additional training on site. It expressed the existing facility will need to be raised due to age, building decontamination requirements, cost to retrofit, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, load requirements, and technology would be cost prohibitive. Obviously, the land purchase cost for that was $1. We were able to get that through the school district. The other one I know has come up in some conversations that I also want to address is there have been questions about, well, could the city get Myers Field? If anybody doesn't know where that is, that's basically when you're going on Hickory past the university, you go down Altic, you go down Hickory, and there's that large field. The problem with that is, again, number one, that's owned by the university, and what I don't think a lot of people realize about that site is when that was basically deeded to the university, it was deeded under the restriction that into perpetuity, it could only be used for recreational amenities. So essentially, you can't build anything on it. So that put that one out. So then what we started to look at was then the concept design of what a new facility would have to be. Overall plan right now is a 2-story facility with a basement alternative. We're looking at about 7 full apparatus bays. We have a base bay coming in right now of about 31,640 square feet. And then with the alternate, the basement, we're about 39,320. These are all of the different colored areas when we're looking at the concept plan. We're looking at training rooms, we're looking at apparatus bay, the apparatus support, staff support, the administration areas, mechanical storage, and circulation. So the next step then that they did in the study, and as we've worked with our architects, is kind of the conversation between renovation, and we renovate only great, or would we essentially have to go to new construction? What they looked at, obviously, was the original facility was created for educational purposes and obviously not for emergency response. It was built very close to the property edges. The visitor parking would have to be downhill from the entry. The front entry on the facility would have to be on the backside if we're going to try to renovate it versus doing new construction. The visitors cross over the return apron to the access facility. The front apron obviously then would be very shallow. And then we'd have concerns where there would be no room for future expansion, no room for on-site training. And then also in all of the studies, not only ours, but the ones they did in 2008 and 2004, identified that unfortunately it would require more demolition than what could be renovated, and the cost, because you're updating the building that's in the 60s, would also be cost prohibitive. So as I kind of talked about here, as you can see, trying to use the footprint, they would do the best they can, but the problem again then comes to visitor parking, and you have people then that would be going across the apparatus and entry in order to get into the building. So that kind of shifted the focus to new construction. What they looked at then was a new construction site plan that had visitor parking, a separate visitor parking area, as you can see down here. It then has a separate visitor entry. It has a separate responder parking as well as the responder entry. It has its own response aprons and return aprons. It then also has water retention and on-site training. Those are these 2 areas right here. One of the other questions I saw that was kind of going around was that potentially the city would be buying homes. With this plan, no, we're not. We're using the existing site. We are not purchasing or looking to take over anybody's home in order to put the fire station up. So what the approved concept plan that the council came up with was this. The first floor plan right now has a 7 apparatus bay. That's everything here in blue. Essentially, it has a small garage that you can see up here, which is the support vehicles for both the chief and the fire inspector. It has decontamination and apparatus support. That is everything in red, and that is something, if you have not been in our fire station, I would encourage you to set up a time to walk through with our chief. That is one of the areas we are drastically lacking right now in our current fire station, because it was built in 1964. They were not aware back then of all of the carcinogens, obviously all of the requirements that they have to fight with. That's why this is one of the very important things that we're trying to do. Obviously, then it has administration. That's everything you see in yellow. And then we are looking at trying to put in basically a community room space similar to this that would hold about 60 people. Potentially right now it does have a commercial kitchen in it, which could be used for training purposes or emergency operations center. Perfect example, we have a storm coming up. You know, we're always looking at potential spaces that we may need to put people. That's something that they're considering. And then obviously the ability for it to be used for community room space, where people can rent it out, they can do whatever, different events, things like that. The second floor then is basically long-term, thinking long-term, is looking at staff support. So this is where thinking about right now, we're a volunteer fire department, but potentially talking 10, 20 years down the road, we may need to either go to paid on call or actually be a full-time fire department. That then does require the fact that we would need dorm rooms and spaces specifically for the firefighter. So that is primarily what the second floor is being kind of spec'd out for. It's also including all gender toilet and shower facilities. That's also something in our current facility that is not adequate. So we have issues, again, it's built in 1964. We have a lot more women and other volunteer firefighters. So that's something we're looking at. Then again, as a kind of recruitment and retention tools, we're looking at exercise rooms, kitchen, dining, and day rooms. The other thing that we're looking at is a basement, which then could potentially have classrooms, training, uniform storage, PPE storage, and another again for emergency operations center support. So when they looked at the concept plan, this is currently what they have come up with. Right now, they're looking at about a $13.4 million facility. Again, we got a $7 million appropriation that goes against this 13 million. So there's the alternative then, obviously, where it would be about 16 million. These are very raw numbers. This is the next step in the process, is to go through the schematic design. And that's where essentially they will start looking at, okay, are there square footage that can be reduced? Are there things that can be, essentially combined so that number goes down? The other thing they're also looking at too is the fact of inflation and contingency. Well, depending on when we do this, we're not sure where the numbers are going to be. So they're obviously being very conservative with considering about a $1.5 to $2 million contingency. That's taking into account inflation. We do expect that that will go down. So right now, the potential schedule that we're looking at is in November of 2023, the council essentially approved to move towards schematic design. January of 2023 is when we're going to start actually beginning the design development. The goal would be by March or April of 2023 to actually have the construction documents start to begin. That's where they're going to be looking at getting everything out so it could potentially be bid. They then have to send those plans to the USDA for final approval. That would be in June. They then would be releasing the plans in July for anybody that potentially would be bidding on the project. They'd be opening those bids in August, and potentially there would be a groundbreaking in September. That's what they would be starting. I will pitch it over to Bill.
Can everybody hear me okay? No. Okay, I don't know if I can wonder now. First, I want to get started by thanking all of you for being here. This is a very important thing for our community and the surrounding townships. Can I get a show of hands of how many people have been in our current fire station recently?
I've been to events there on the outside of the building.
Well, it's the inside. It's the inside we're more concerned on. So some of this may be totally new to you, and those of you who have been there may not be aware of this. Our fire district, which includes 7 townships, about 136 square miles, needs public participation in order for us to get what Adam just showed us. I got a 50-50 chance. Which way? Yeah, great. Actually, Adam gave some points on why we need a new fire station. There's points up there, but the city's got to perform its basic public service of public safety for the fire station. The building, as Adam mentioned, was built in 1964. That's our current station, built to the standards and codes at that time. Those codes and standards do no longer apply for a modern fire station. You can't retrofit this station that we're currently in. The station that we're looking at is over 3 times the size of our current station. And it's large enough so that we can incorporate modern codes and modern best practices, especially for safety. We pay 20 to 25% extra for engines here in Platteville because they won't fit. The regular standard engines won't fit in the current station. As I said before, our current station cannot accommodate modern safety features or best practices. And our on-hands training capability is very limited in this building. Now, what do firefighters do actually? They actually do a lot more than just going to put out fires in Platteville. Like I said, they cover 7 townships in addition to the city of Platteville. And those townships in Platteville, you're talking about 20,000 people when the university's in session. And they also help police and respond to traffic accidents and incidents, as well as other safety matters, public safety matters. Okay, we'll get down to the meat of what we're talking about. We can't do this unless we have public involvement. And that public involvement is going to be trying to raise $1 to $2 million to support this building. We need a lot of different volunteers. And the volunteers will do things like be on a steering committee to help work with the city to decide what portions of the building need to get funded from fundraising. We obviously need fundraisers who will go out and talk to public, talk to stakeholders, and try to get them to contribute to this. We also need champions who will be able to go out and help market this fire station and work on publicity for it. And there's many of you sitting out there with areas of expertise that certainly can help our effort. And we certainly want to encourage you to step forward if you have something that you can offer that we can fit in. And, oh, by the way, you might find out what it takes to be a volunteer firefighter, or you might know somebody who would like to be a volunteer firefighter, because we certainly need those as well. And the last one's kind of the obvious one. You can make a donation. I know a lot of people right now are looking at their required minimum distribution list. And maybe this is someplace you could put that money, either this year or next year. This is the city's #1 priority. We have got to have this. We've got some forms that are available. Cindy and Sherry have some forms that'll pass out for those of you who are interested. Please fill out one of these forms and indicate your interest in the project and show your support for our firefighters, volunteer firefighters. So I guess we're at the point now that it's questions.
Yeah, so I understand you looked at the locations in town, but we service 6 or 7 townships.
Right.
So why not something out on East Side Drive or something, where the city has 36 acres in one lot, 13 acres in another? I just looked at.
Yep, so
So got a lot of land, and you're taking away a building that's really nice and is being used by lots of groups already.
Yep, so they identified that in the study. So if you actually look in the study, one of the things they did is they looked at service area. And they pinpointed on the map, where is the best place to be located that would service all of those municipalities that we serve. Holy Grail's right there.
Yeah.
So that was the
That's a
recommendation that
horrible
came out.
intersection. That intersection is horrible, multiple times a day. Giant trucks turning there all the time that swing wide.
And there are ways that we have already had conversations with the DOT about how we can address that. So in the event they need to get out, there are certain things that can be done to decrease that. But that, with every study, when they looked at that, they looked at service area and it pinpointed where the current fire station is a good spot, as well as pretty much Owing Gray, which is right in that spot. It's right in the circle of where they indicated it should be. Because it also is with response time as well. So when we have volunteer firefighters, the further out you get into an industrial park, that means anybody who typically is a volunteer firefighter, hopefully they're in town, they're now getting from their home, or they're going out to the industrial park and then going back into the city. So that's when they looked at that, they looked at every possible scenario, and in their studies, it showed Owing Gray was one of the #1 spots that came up to be, where it did not decrease any service time to get to any of the current municipalities that the fire district serves.
Yeah, you talked about a base plan at 13.4 million, alternate plan at 16.3 million, you got 7 million coming from a grant. Where are you getting from there to your $1 to $2 million shortfall?
So those are some of the conversations, obviously, when it gets into schematic design, we have to figure out. So part of that is going to be, right now, they're looking at about a 31,000 square foot facility. In talking with Five Bugles, when they did their presentation to the council, pretty much every single study that they have done has shrunk in some form and footprint when it gets to the schematic design. So that potentially will reduce the cost. The other thing we're obviously going to be looking at then are what other grants that we potentially can be eligible for to make up that difference. Our goal essentially is to get to as short of a number as we can, that then essentially as a city and as the rest of these surrounding townships, we would essentially have to go and borrow that amount. And that's gonna be the question. If it is 6 million, there's conversations then that obviously have to occur between all those municipalities. Because what does that mean? Does that mean then that essentially we're not gonna do a project, we're not gonna do something else? That's why obviously we're trying to, again, we're grateful that we got 7 million. There are many municipalities that aren't even close to that. They're looking at, trying to have to find a way to fund the entire 16 million on their own. It's also then gonna be questions. Some of the things we'll have to look at is the basement is an alternate bid, that's an additional $3 million. If that financial question comes, then we have to determine if we put a basement in. We then also have to look at some of the other things on the second floor. This is some of the conversations that have occurred with other municipalities, is ideally, we would like to build it and have everything done and be there. But Greenville was an example. They're in the same situation. They did not put in their dorm rooms. They put in the space, but then when they get to that point, that tipping point, that they have to pull, basically make the decision to go to either a paid on call or a full-time department, they have the space already there. So then all they have to really build is the interior. So those are kind of all the conversations as we get to schematic design that the council, basically the townships, are gonna have to determine what is that number that they feel comfortable essentially going for. And obviously the more fundraising and the more grants that we're able to get decreases that final cost then that potentially has to be borrowed.
Do the townships pay part of it?
Correct. Yes, so there is a formula that essentially it's based on population. So based on the population, whatever that number is, that's similar to how the budget is right now. So when we finalize the budget for the city, there is then a formula that equates to what that is. So right now with the entire fire district, the city of Platteville is roughly about 77% of that total cost. So then it goes, each individual municipality then has a percentage.
What does number 1 mean on there, under your notes? If you've already got the site. What's the acquisition for sites?
Right, so when this spreadsheet came from the original, at that point in time, they were looking at, this was the study. So at that point in time, we had not acquired the property. So now that we have essentially acquired it, correct, that does not include any site acquisition costs because we've already paid for
I live on that block. And how can I believe that you're not gonna take my house? We went to your meeting at OE Gray in the spring or whatever, and you told the senior citizens that they would not have to move. They have. So why should I trust that you're not gonna come and take my house?
that. So I would say I never said that, first off, that I never said in the
Said they
meeting
won't be
that they wouldn't have to
relocated.
move.
That's what you told them. They won't be relocated.
Like I said, they would be relocated. I said originally in the plan, they were going to have a space that could be utilized. That's true. The conversation we've always had with the senior center is that when this was being built, there would be a time they would have to be somewhere. But going back to that plan, this is what happened. The conversation we have always had was right here with the senior center. Because this potentially was a space. Now, the feedback we got from the senior center and the staff was they had concerns about that because it wouldn't be their space. So that's where, as we started this project, the council also reviewed an alternative location, and right now they are going to be located in City Hall. That is currently being remodeled 100% for the senior center. Where we have a former space that was not being utilized, that was our police department. When our police department essentially moved to their new building, it used to be, I think at one point in time, it was a clinic. There were some other things that were in there. That entire space now is being remodeled essentially to be utilized by the senior center.
Adam, the city is not into ownership of the armory as of yet, is that right?
Correct.
And is the plan then for the city to purchase the armory at some point?
No, as of right now, no. So what we are looking at doing right now is there is an RFP that is going out, that can be submitted, I believe, by Thursday. Where we are looking to partner essentially with a developer or a business or an organization that would own the armory and then continue to allow us to utilize that for recreation. Sure. Yep, so right now, essentially, this is the apron that they use, so they will essentially pull out to right here, and then if they have to go this way, they have to exit, they go straight.
Is that Elm Street? Is that the-
It's Chestnut.
Chestnut and
Adams.
Adams. So this is the Adams and this is Chestnut. Right, so we already had a preliminary conversation with the DOT. They are, in those conversations, to get a stop light there is not, it's DOT, so that is not an easy conversation. But we have talked about the ability where the fire department essentially has the ability to do flashing sensors, flashing lights, things that obviously make it indicate that if they have to exit there, there's awareness that they're coming out of that apron. And that can be placed in multiple locations on Adams Street as well as Chestnut, so that they're aware when they're coming out. They can basically signal that the minute the door opens, it basically triggers those lights to let people know that there is essentially they are responding.
Your timeline said that breaking ground would be, optimistically next September. Why do we have to be out of the building in March? We've been told, I'm in the Elks Lodge there, and we've been told that we need to be somewhere else at the end of March. Why would that be?
For preparation purposes, that is what the contractor told us, is they want to have utilization of the site as early as March.
But there is no contractor at that point. You're still putting it out to bid at that point for that timeline.
There are things as far as city staff where we can go in there and start taking things out that potentially could be utilized, so that's where that came into place. So essentially, there's things that we can utilize in the new fire station, so again, we wanted to make sure that we have the capability where if they do, the contractor is in there in August, we essentially need time to be able to try to reduce the cost, to have our own staff go in and take out anything that can be reused or potentially replenished. So that's why we wanted to make sure we had enough timeline so that we were in that situation.
I understand that the city has about 40,000 the previous year.
Yep.
Is that 40,000 covering this remodeling?
Yes, so that is covering essentially the first phase of that remodeling, absolutely, that was the decision. Yep, that was the first move that was done by the council to see if we can get that. And then after that, if there's anything that additionally needs to be done, that's gonna go back to the council, obviously, for consideration of how we fund the remainder. But that is good, that essentially we utilize that first to cover the cost directly.
And then what about the parking, for the old, by the old police station? How is that gonna accommodate for the seniors?
Yep, so that's something that we're looking at actually right now. So that is a conversation that will have to go eventually to the planning commission and then the council. But our intention would be that we would be looking to designate specific spots that during primary hours of the senior center, which typically is, usually from the morning till about 3 is kind of what I've seen. We're looking to designate specific spots that during those times would only be able to be used by senior center participants.
And then with the senior center, people that are participating there would have a sticker like for the window or to put on their dad,
Possibly, those are things we kind of have to figure out. I mean, essentially, we would have obviously some type of sign similar to as you see where it's designated parking for this or designated parking for that. If we were finding that there were concerns that there were people obviously parking there that weren't utilizing the senior center, then we're gonna have to talk about, what tactics we have to do. That's just like you said, a sticker or something that basically verifies that that's the case.
because when we were on Ford Street, cause like I legally, I would stay for all of it, but like the bingo or whatever, because it was past the 3 hours, like that.
Sure.
So then I get up and leave, and then I found out, oh, you just put the sticker that they use, paper in your windshield, and then you can get a ticket.
Okay.
So it's like, you're done if you do that. I didn't even know about that. I
Sure.
could've been longer.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we've already started talking about, is kind of looking at the space and trying to identify, where can we change spots or have spots be specific, timelines to try to accommodate that. We've had the staff kind of keeping track for events of how many participants, how many cars, so that we can kind of get it.
And it's my understanding that there are some, communication department issues, from a facility standpoint at the current facility, and that those can be addressed with the, construction of a new facility, but, and what are those?
Want to take that one?
All right,
I don't want to leave you out.
so yeah, so I'm a little louder than these guys, so hopefully you can hear me. So communication stuff, I guess you're talking radio communications and things like that. So two things that are happening. One, with that new facility allows us to have an antenna system on the building for our operations out of the station. Where right now, because of all the radio stuff that's in the city, and it's all on the current city hall. Our system right now to make our radios work is we're renting space out on the Big M to make our radio stuff work, because we could not use our radios or talk in the city, which was kind of a bad thing. So that is a temporary fix. So with the new building, it allows us to interface that all into the EOC area and our command area within the station. And then we also were able to partner with Grant County. And they are currently, if you look out on County D by where the county shop is, they are currently stacking a new radio antenna, which will be for the county radio system. And we've actually negotiated with them that they're allowing us to have space on there as well for not only the fire department's repeater system, as well as the police department's repeater system on there, which will then tie through the fiber system that the county and the city have put in back to our dispatch center here in Platteville, as well as tie up to the dispatch center in Grant County. So that will give us height. It'll get us on a system that was designed truly for radio communications, and it will interact with the county system as well as the city system, and should eliminate our radio issues for hopefully years to come. So that has all been in the works and all budgeted in for next year to have that changes, except for the last phase of it, which obviously can't happen until the new facility would be constructed. So. As far as radio stuff with the building, no, that the base part would not traditionally affect that unless it were to end up down in a big valley or something, but that part of it shouldn't be dependent on where the location would be for that.
No, the other thing that would be specifically one of the questions that came up with communication, if you look at the concept plan. One of the big areas right now that is lacking is you can't see it up here, is basically the kind of command office. So whenever there's a, call that goes in, everybody kind of reports and they go here. That room right now can probably fit how many people, Ryan?
Comfortably?
Yeah.
4.
Right.
Maybe that's not even comfortably, I guess.
So when you're talking about communication, in newer design fire stations, it's a large room that has multiple computers, multiple radios, multiple access, and basically spaces it out. So it's almost desks depending on what the situation is or the event. So that's one of the things that a lot of these areas, when we're looking at the fire station, they're taking that into account, considering communication, how to improve that. It's space.
So the water retention pond, or is it?
We don't know yet. So essentially that's stormwater. So we're not sure. That's gonna be part of the schematic design. So depending when we get to kind of the completion, that's why when when you're looking at the plan, they've got just a space essentially identified as, that. That's my front door. Maybe we'll flip it. So we have options.
So
Want to let you know.
No, fair enough.
yeah, our understanding from them though is that will drain into the normal stormwater system. It'll be like a holding pond to slowly to
Yes.
regulate. Yeah. No, but it'd be like a holding pond to regulate the.
Question.
Yeah, with the additional of the hard surface, and there'll be probably little multiple areas throughout the property where they just.
But it's gonna be fenced too, right?
Yes, we'll figure all that out. We can't guarantee that, but. Right. We can put that in and we'll see what that comes out to, because that obviously is always a cost question, but. We'll make sure, our goal is obviously to work with everybody to make sure.
Otherwise, I don't care what goes. Okay? That's my only goal.
Got it. Yeah.
No, you're good.
This particular area for 48 grade,
adequate electric power and, water supply for a fire station?
Yes, so that's something when they did the study and kind of they got into the concept plans, they reviewed all of the kind of water usage. And it will accommodate what they need. Potentially, there may be something in the construction where they may have to do something going into the fire station, but as far as the water access is there.
Water main big enough to support grid?
That's a you question.
Yeah, most of them are 8-inch, a couple in, Lewis and Cord are 6-inch, but those are more than sufficient.
Adam, would you go back to the committees and what the different
Yeah.
volunteer opportunities and talk through those a little bit more?
Sure.
Okay, well, they're kind of basic. We just need, this is a unique project because we're trying to raise money to pay for the building, not to add nice things. So, I personally don't see a big steering committee because those are the people who would decide what we were gonna add to the building in order to make it nicer. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. So we have to build what is necessary, and we're trying to raise part of that money to do that. Fundraisers, obviously, are the people who go out, visit the community, talk to people and say, can you give us a donation to go towards this cause? The champions are people who really want to push and make this happen and want to go out and talk either to individuals, groups, or help with printed, published materials on why we need to do this and work with people to try to get them to understand what is needed and either contribute or be supportive of the project. I know some of you are experts in various things, and they may be something that we need that will be of help to us, but it's not necessarily dealing with raising money. And then, of course, I had, if you know somebody who might think about being a volunteer firefighter, here's an opportunity to pitch that. Did that answer your question? And
Yes.
okay.
Has there been an estimate in, will that 40,000 cover for the remodeling of the old police department? Did they take into effect? Tearing out the rooms, making the rooms bigger, I understand that, but will it cover for more lights or hearing loop?
So one, we have an amazing, and I'm not saying this because he's in the audience, we have an amazing building maintenance specialist who has done amazing work in that facility. So our goal number one has been to try to use as much city manpower or force as we can until we have to start going to those questions of, okay, we have had a couple of kind of donation questions that have come up when people heard that that's the possibility. There's been some options. So we're kind of looking into that to see how we can accommodate, kind of meeting some of those needs that have been requested in the new space to kind of generate some additional revenue. But then, yeah, when it comes down to kind of the, our goal is to try to see how much we can get done to make it obviously a usable space. And then anything that needs to be done additionally in that, that's going to be the question we're going to have to figure out, which is, our goal then would be just like we do with anything in the city, it's going to go in our capital improvement plan and it's going to be priorities. And obviously our priority is we want to make sure that the space that's being utilized is meeting the needs. So if there's something that's not, that's the question then that goes to the common council and they prioritize and they definitely take that into consideration. So if there is additional things that need to be done, we're going to make sure that gets on the list and then we're going to prioritize that to make sure we get it done as quick as possible.
Another question. Yeah. The senior center now pays $15,000 a year to the city for not
Yep,
correct, but.
kind of to assist with the
What
cost.
will we
Sure.
have to pay for the new, the old fire, or
So that's something we're definitely gonna be looking
just a little break on it, or?
at. That's our, I mean, I can't, fingers crossed. That's obviously a conversation for the council, but I mean, that's one of our hopes, is that by obviously consolidating everything into City Hall, we're hoping there will be some cross utilization, cross savings, because, the utility use was already there. Again, that part of it always comes down to, if we have fundraising opportunities, we are never gonna say no, because that obviously helps us to do other things for the senior center and continues to keep it very good. But, our hope would be that by kind of consolidating, we'll see, our goal is to look at utility costs, to look at everything, and kind of when we go through the next budget, see how that fluctuates.
I'm representing one of the townships in the area, we have a very small percentage of rural. Are you guys, what are we thinking is gonna be a hard number? That we're gonna be using? You think the summer, this summer, or when is the payment?
Yeah, so I mean, those are all the questions, obviously, when we get to kind of get through schematic design and get that better cost estimate. Then our plan is to obviously sit down and look at working with our municipal advisors and trying to figure out what that means. Just to kind of answer your question, is there are some ways, obviously, we can go after some USDA loans. That potentially, instead of your normal borrowing is 20 years, a USDA loan allows you to do 40. So essentially, it can reduce some of that cost in half. It's just spread over longer years. So those are all the things we're gonna kind of have to look at, is once we get to schematic design, our intention is to kind of then really start going to all the townships and starting to have the conversations of, okay, this is what we're looking at, where financially does this put you? Because again, our goal is we want to try to break ground here if we can by, August, fall of next year. But if we're obviously finding out that there are municipalities that are having issues with getting to that timeline, we're gonna have to take that into consideration. Obviously, that's questions for the council. The city does have a larger borrowing capacity. So that potentially is an option where the city could actually borrow the amount and then work with the townships on some type of an agreement for that. Can't guarantee that, because that has to be voted on by the council, but those are all things that kind of get taken into consideration when we start looking at the finances, how you specifically finance this project.
So summarize, there is no timeline on that, it's gonna be a work in progress throughout this next year,
Correct.
and payment would be needed following year.
I mean, essentially, right, so what would happen is we would be breaking ground, you're not gonna get billed for that. So essentially, it's once those once those costs and actual construction come in, we'd probably be looking at sometime in 2024 is when we would actually be making those payments. And those are some of the things we can talk about with, there's some financial maneuvers that you can do where you can do an anticipation note that allows you some flexibility to not have to, you can get the money, but you don't have any interest payments or anything like that. So there's a lot of kind of financial scenarios and situations that we'll have to look at when we get closer to finding out what the actual amount is.
Any discussion on this fire department building?
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of a conversation on that. Essentially, right now, the thought process is that building would be put up for a request for proposals. And essentially, we would be looking at either a developer or somebody that potentially would take that property and either put it back on the tax roll, or, those are conversations obviously for the council. If there is some other organization or, some other need, that is a possibility. But right now, the conversations have the discussion so far has been, the anticipation is that we will do some type of a request for proposals to see what potentially the city could garner in interest in that spot.
Do the townships have interest in all of that?
Oh, good question. I'm gonna be the historian, anybody?
I could be wrong. Ron might be able to tell me a little bit more, but I believe the city completely paid for that building. Yeah, I believe that was back in the day that there wasn't, the township did not have a purchase cost in that back in the 64.
Yeah, well,
We'll take it.
How's that zone now?
Institutional.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it should be all the city properties
I
are,
checked with Joe Carroll, it's
Institutional.
properly zoned.
so both OE Gray and, I believe Fire Station are institutional.
You're talking about the current fire station? Yeah, so that would be something that definitely would be discussed, is depending on, if they go out for an RFP or if somebody has any interest in it. Certainly, that would be a conversation about rezoning to make it appropriate for whatever use they're trying to, whether it be business or, yeah, because institutional, it more than likely would be, if it goes out for a proposal, it would be rezoning.
Just a little comment involved. I've been a fireman for, anyway, we're at the same juncture right now that we're with the fire station. Center. We had trucks parked sideways in there, every way that we could, and when the truck went out the door, you better darn well be out of the way, between the truck and the door, done. And we're at that same juncture right now, with the present station. We're not really forcing position on the public for any other reason, they're just done. And the other thing that you gotta look at is the youth that we have work with today, required and ladies. It's altogether different was back in the day. I think maybe they expect more, and if you don't give them more, we won't get them. That's basically where we're at. Back when I started, we had a waiting list. We had a waiting list to get in the fire department for years. All the way through probably the first 10 or 15 years of the current station. Just so you know, we don't have that list anymore. And we're short probably up to 15 people, could be any day, any given day. Because we've got college kids that are doing their thing with us, helping themselves, of course, with a new position, new job, they're going to school. And it really has made a big difference. But in order to accommodate that and still keep try to be 60 people, we're gonna have to do something. We're up against it. I'm a retired fireman, a little town in Minnesota. What I've gathered, talking to some of the local firemen when I was from, what he's talking about. We had what they call a relief association. Our relief association got a few mills from the city budget, depending on the fire rating that we get. I get a pretty decent little retirement. We got $5 when we went to a fire. We got $5, or whatever. But there were incentives, and tell you right now, money don't buy everything. That little town, 10, 15,000 has to go out and extend their mileage limit. They're bringing in farmers to 300 apartments now. They need some incentives. Yeah. We did that 10 years ago. They're still doing it.
If you look back over the last 10 years, and you look at the total firefighters in the United States, 10 years ago, 85% were volunteers. Today, it's 65%. We've got a lot of factors working against us. There's fewer children, especially in this area. That's why our enrollment in our schools are going down. There's a different mindset today, perhaps. Maybe it's just because I'm getting old. I think that people don't want to do this. But it's a fact we're gonna have to face. And it goes back to the building we're trying to build is one that will last the city 40 to 70 years. That's a long time. Now, Rod said they left didn't they leave the fire station that you were in before the current one was built in 1927, thereabouts.
One, the other one burned.
Yeah, it burned. So you had a significant emotional event that made you build a new fire station. We're trying to avoid that. In 1964, the new station was built. So what do we got? 40 years? Between,
60.
no, the 27 to the 64, 40 years. We've got 20 years beyond that. And I can tell you, I can show you what a fire truck looks like in 1927. You could fit two of them in half of this room. And then in 1964, when they built the current station, you maybe could get two of them in the full room. Today, you wouldn't be able to park one in here.
We took our trucks, from the old station to the new station, we could have had a dance, and the rest of them. There was all kinds of.
So we're talking about the change from 27 to 64, and this is even a longer change. We're behind schedule here, and we need to do that. You have a question, sir?
All right, well, with the revamping of the building, free opportunity. Revamp. And like, if you're having a problem with college students, you're doing it wrong, because when I ran a school, you didn't need much of it. Okay, so if someone is in college, they're doing that, whatever, then next, they get a replacement, or two. Remember that? Even for the right people, the people who wanna wear that badge, first class, first guy, great. That, then go, them on that same statue. How do you like, your concert program, manage your situation, once you stay, and you move on. Part of it. That's where I suggest we opportunity.
This facility would give us many more opportunities to help protect us, because that's what this is all about.
Just a couple things. We don't have a problem with the college students. It's just that they do come and go and we replace them, but they also leave for 3 months out of the year. You gotta look that they're gonna go home over the summertime where they're not in school and stuff. So you have those different voids throughout the year. So that's where you run into some little issues there. It's not that we have a problem with them. The other thing, the recruitment and retention's 100% something that we're looking into. So it's making it a place where volunteers or individuals from the community want to be a part of that. And that retention side of, it's something they're proud of to be part of, and it has spaces for them to be there. You know, because that's, for us, we look at, like with college kids, if there's a learning space that they can be there, you know, a nice place where they can do their fitness activities and stuff. If they're at the station and we have a call, that just reduces the response time that we get out to somebody's, you know, the incident that we're going to. So it just makes us, it gives us a much faster response. So that's our goal is to use it also as a retention and a recruitment piece. Yeah.
The last thing I want to say, and then I will hand this back to Adam. To make this building last as long as we would like it to last, the basement becomes a critical factor. Now that's more money, and we may not be able to afford it, but we must work hard in order to try and get that basement installed, because that's one thing that you can't go back and add later. And yes, we can and may have to not build out the second floor and the dorm spaces for the future. But that decision comes with the kicker. When you have to go back and put those rooms in, because now you need to have paid firefighters, it'll probably cost more than twice of what it would cost if we do it now. if we were able to do it now. The other thing is, unless you plan this out, then you're gonna get hit with a double whammy. You're gonna get hit with not only having to build this space out, but you're now gonna have the added cost of paying these firefighters. So it's gonna be a double whammy there. You know, we're gonna do what we can do. But it's just things that need to be thought about as we go through this process.
Well, again, we obviously thank everybody for coming out tonight. This was recorded, so this is actually going to be put on YouTube. So that if anybody, one of the big things we're looking for now, obviously from the public, is when you hear people who have questions about the fire station or make comments about the fire station. This is the goal, is to get them as much information as possible. So direct them to, hey, I was at a meeting, and you hear somebody talking about that. If you want to know the information, here it is. Listen to this, and if they have any questions, have them ask staff, have them ask the fire chief, have them ask council members. Again, more information that we get out there and education to people, better understanding is a thing. So, and again, there's a lot going on here. There's a long way to go. But our goal is, again, try to get as much information out as possible. We're continuing to. Yeah.
Ryan, if I wanted to tour the fire station because I haven't been there for 40 years, how do I get there?
So you can just call down to the station and arrange that with me. That information is on the city's website. If you go to the Platteville.org website and you click on the fire tab, it has all the contact information. That we started a Q&A on the project as well. It has my contact information. I believe it has Adams. It has all our contact information, and we'd be happy to get you through there. If you can't find that number or figure us out, we're there Monday nights at 7 p.m. Pretty much every single, unless it's a holiday, we're there. So just stop down in 6:30, 7 o'clock, and there will be somebody there that will get you through the station and have you look around. So.
I got a question. Who is Inspired Community Inc.? I see that they're located in the Delta building.
Yep.
Is that a place you could just walk in and talk to somebody? Do they have office hours or business hours? Or what's?
Yeah, we have office hours from 8 to 5.
So, yeah,
Yep.
you're there, huh?
We're there.
This is you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's an organization, it's a nonprofit that essentially has helped with a lot of our city projects that we have. So that would be most recently, that would be in the Grosky Center, the pickleball courts, they help with the inclusive playground. They do a lot to help kind of volunteer organizations, help with fundraising. So.
One last thing, everybody's got those sheets. In order to be successful in this fundraising activity, we gotta have some volunteers to make it happen. So please fill out that sheet. We'd like for you to leave it here tonight. There's a table right around the corner if you need something to write on. If you're still thinking about it, get home and make your decision. Yeah, I want to do this, then please mail it to Inspiring Community or bring it by. These sheets are very important.
You might not think you have the skills needed, but there'll be mailings and stuff, envelopes and thank yous to be written and social media posts put up. So
I might come over. with you.
yes, there's
Alright.
a lot, everybody has different skills.
All right, well, thank you guys for coming. Have a great night.